So I want to talk about my longtime main today and what I personally hope for it in tomorrow's job action trailer and live letter. Just from talking to people and having people ask me this question outright so many times, I think that when a lot of people click this video that they actually expect me to be extremely spicy and just lambast the Scholar's Kit from top to bottom. And I really do mean that. Sometimes when people ask me, they seem disappointed that I didn't flamethrower the Scholar. They want me to start breaking chairs and flipping tables about the entire kit and assume that I want it wiped clean, but to put it simply, that's not how I actually feel. I'm hoping people will actually hear me out on this. Shadowbringers brought in significant reworks to the Scholar, such as introducing Seraph, which is a brand new fairy that can provide additional shielding. We never had that ability with the fairy before. The baseline fairy, now that we'd lost Celine, had a brand new action called Fey Blessing added that would provide a small bump of AoE healing. We also had Sacred Soil have a heal over time effect component added that turned that skill, which was widely regarded as weak and a waste of Aether Flow, into a skill that I happily call the most powerful short cooldown skill we have in 14 for healing. Although I know people are going to say in the comment section, and I'm right there with you, the most broken skill for healers undeniably goes to Astrologian with its neutral sect, which is just beyond disgusting, but that is on a 2-minute timer. But talking about the Scholar, the shielding and the ability to mitigate damage as it comes in through things like Sacred Soil and Fey Illumination, I never want to give up. I never ever want to give that up. Or abilities like XCOG and deployment tactics that one can very easily argue are unnecessary for hyper-optimized parse rating. That is true. These, however, are tools that I, as someone who does not take part in bleeding edge parse rating, would never want to lose. I want them. I never want to give these up. In my mind, being able to actively deal with damage proactively via shields, mitigation, and whatever you call XCOG, I'm really not sure, and then retroactive burst tools like Lustrate and Indom makes me love the Scholar's Healing Kit. I love approaching healing this way, let alone having the ability to offload responsibility onto the fairy. Although it is significantly less control these days, which I'm going to talk about in a second, there is an immense amount of flexibility and actual power in the constant fairy embrace going off. We went through the HPS numbers before, and that is super significant. Or what about offloading AoE healing with the double weave of something like Whispering Dawn and Fey Blessing, or Constellation Weaving? That is very significant. And like, if we take the Scholar's Kit and put it push comes to shove, although almost no situation calls for it outside of something like E11S Electric Cycles or E12S's Soft Enrage Cluster Fudge of Eternal Relativity Phase, you could do a deployment tactics Adlo with Sacred Soil and Fey Illumination, and then you get the big fairy out there with Whispering Dawn ticking. I'm catching myself actually in that. Angel's Whisper, because Seraph is out, it's not going to be Whispering Down, it's going to be Angel's Whisper, same thing though. But the point is, all of that stacked together really does trivialize the morbid amount of damage coming in. So do I want wide sweeping changes to the Scholar's Kit? Although this will definitely get me flame broiled in many circles I lurk or engage in, absolutely not. While anyone who has played Scholar knows it can and does run out of gas when things really hit the fan, I do love its healing kit deeply. I hope, and I dearly, sincerely hope, that its healing kit is not altered too extremely into Endwalker. In fact, that'd be something that actually made me really sad and maybe even would push me fully away from Scholar if that happened. Which I should obviously say, like, is not something that I want to happen. I don't want that to happen at all. But now here's where I get into what I do want to see for changes. So first off, I need a more engaging DPS rotation, and I truly, honestly, genuinely do not want to simply deal more damage. I think a lot of people unfortunately misconstrue what I say about wanting more DPS toolkit to mean that I want the Scholar to deal like as much DPS as on a healer. I don't care if the Scholar does the exact same damage or even a touch lower than White Mage. I literally don't care. But what I want is, I want simply to be engaged. That's after all why I want to play this. I like that. And even when you pull up Savage Fights, when you look at the Savage Fights, healers are contributing a ton of DPS, and what that really means is that they are spending a lot of their time casting exclusively DPS spells that has nothing to do with healing. And so when we're looking at any healer's kit, especially the Scholar, that has a legacy of having a more advanced rotation, it's always about, okay, the healing kit's good, well, what about the DPS kit? And that is something that you definitely can't overlook. Like, literally the numbers on FF logs literally tell you this is a very important part that they are actively doing a ton of, even in Savage raiding, which is arguably the hardest content that most people will ever touch. I realize ultimate raiding is a thing, but that is such a small fraction of a fraction of a fraction of the player base. That's why I'm just like in Savage raiding, but even in ultimate raiding, it is an expectation that wherever you can, you are doing something DPS wise. And unfortunately, this gets into something where I do read the comments and some people tell me to just play a DPS, but reality is that that's not what I want. I find enjoyment from juggling many tasks. This is one reason why I was drawn to the Scholar in the first place. I actually usually find just doing DPS not nearly as engaging, which is one reason why I diversify what I've played so much, especially this expansion. I just can't stick to just one thing. Scholar prior to Shadowbringers, however, was never this linear spamming broil one freshing dot one thing. So my sincere hopes is that we get back to something more reminiscent of like a DPS toolkit where it's a little bit more defined. I'm not asking for like a summoner rotation here though, guys, but like something that's a little bit more than spamming broil. It's painful. Change number 2 is that I want macro control of my fairy back. And long story short, for anyone who isn't super familiar, we used to be able to put the fairy abilities, which included Embrace, into macros and have them automatically aimed at targets. Well, maybe not automatically because you're directing it with the macro, but you know what I mean. This could allow us to essentially tell the fairy something like spam Embrace to heal the tank non-stop, and don't use Embrace on any of the DPS because I can handle their chip damage myself. Because the fairy's Embrace healing is definitely something that you want to utilize properly. And so it's like this expansion, I found it very frustrating when I'm doing something like even an expert dungeon and the tank is pulling, I bring out the big fairy and then all of a sudden I see Seraph healing little chip damage on the DPS that aren't in any threat. And while I realize that most people never care about this or even enter an extreme trial where this could become relevant, this is something that does mean a lot to me in the past and would mean a lot to me going forward. And change 3 is similar. Fairy prompts, I got 99 prompts and 98 of them are fairy controls. But we used to be able to cast the fairy actions in parallel to other casts. This means that I could be casting Resurrection and then signaling my fairy to use West Spring Dawn, for instance, at the exact same time. I wouldn't need to interrupt my cast. This is completely gone these days, and executing any fairy command requires you to weave in Ruin 2 and then use it, or something like that. Please weave, don't do nothing and just use it. But for me, I have honestly been nauseatingly vocal about it since, well, specifically at the start of the expansion. I got a little bit quieter over time because I just kind of gave up, but especially with the new edition of Fey Blessing, it just felt like a huge chunk of that ability's power was completely reduced because now it's just a simple weave. And note guys, I am not saying that it's weak numbers wise, this adds up. The Scholar, when we look at the numbers, is no slouch. But when I look at Fey Blessing specifically, it reminds me of Astrologian's Horoscope, but without the enhancement effect, because you get the default 200 potency or whatever, then you can enhance it by using an AoE ability. But the Astrologian also has weaves on Malefic, so it's actually even worse than that because we actually lose potency. You get what I mean. I mean, yeah, you do energy drain. I'm thinking of how people are gonna like say that's not true. Guys, stop nitpicking. You know what I mean. And that's it. That's the changes that I'd want that would really make me happy. More control over the fairy, more involved DPS rotation, and just kind of like the rest of the kit left alone. I sometimes feel when people ask me that they expect me to lambast the Scholar, and like I said at the intro, that is just not how I feel. And now if you've hopefully, and thank you if you have hit this point of the video, but hopefully you've heard my viewpoints and you get, like, I'd actually be really sad if the Scholar was completely overhauled in Endwalker. Like, say the fairy was turned into like a temporary buff like the Machinist Robot, where you only got the fairy for a temporary period of time rather than be like a core part of your kit like it has been. I'd honestly be really sad, and I'm thinking we might head that direction just because we did not see the fairy in the benchmark trailer, and I'm like, I'm hoping for the best. I'm genuinely hoping Sage or Scholar pans out to be fun.